So if we look at the agenda for today's sessions, as I said, the goal of the session is to focus on a detailed walkthrough of the configuration portal. We're going to review a little bit of system architecture, just to remind us where we are in the process and where this application fits in. Do a detailed walkthrough of the wireframe and a demo of the portal. Recap, and then once again revisit our upcoming timelines and meetings to make sure we're all on the same page. On slide 3, which is a little bit more about today's sessions, we really want you to understand what the navigational structure is, the pages, and the tasks that you're expected to do within the portal. Understand the process of that's driving this, and where the configuration portal is used in the Open Checkbook pages. Review again the target project timeline, and specifically the timeline for creating and updating the contextual information, and make sure we're all on the same page about how we test and verify that the context information is accurate and portrayed well on the Open Checkbook site. On the next slide, slide 4, this is really just a review of where the portal sits in the process. As you remember, the Open Checkbook application now consists of 2 parts. One, the configuration portal, where you would configure a lot of your data, and 2, the dashboards that the public will see. We have 2 environments for this information. The first is the onboarding environment. So this is the environment that we're all using now, or we're going to use to onboard all of your information. And so this is our environment that we're going to be testing in, validating in, running over and over again until everything is correct. And then once everything is correct in the onboarding environment, we'll shift the information to the public-facing production environment. And from that point on, you will manage your information in the production environment in the same way that you do in the onboarding environment. And we'll talk a little bit about the differences in that later on. So I just want to make sure that everyone is comfortable with those 2 pieces and the general process that as we've laid out. Any questions on that? Excellent. So then at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ben, who's going to walk through the portal structure and then take us through the portal demonstration.
Thanks, Corey. So thanks everyone for jumping on the call this morning and Justin for the time, just some scheduling stuff. I'm going to dive into, so Corey kind of did an overview of where the portal sits, which should have been a review within the overall solution. And what this slide tries to convey is kind of the general navigational structure of the portal itself. So again, I know that the portal is a bit of review for most of you, but this slide kind of highlights the 3 main areas within the portal and what they're really meant to do. The first is a set of data summary pages, which are kind of just navigational pages that allow the user to review tasks and or kind of high-level maintenance-related things. That would be the home page, which gives a list of kind of statuses of all the different tasks that the authority is expected to complete. And then in addition to that, we have some file monitoring pages, which actually are kind of separate from the data entry and management, and they actually will allow the authorities to manage the files that they transmit to the Open Checkbook via SFTP. So these are managing the files that not are entered necessarily in the portal, but that are coming through the pipe to our servers, the bulk data. So that's another note that we'll highlight today when I walk through the screens. The second set of pages is a set that kicks off from the home page, and we'll go through all this in detail, but this is kind of just wanted to bookend this process, is authority summary data entry. This is all the high-level information about your authority, contact information, descriptive information. Spending data descriptions, this is all of the information, the high-level descriptive information about all of your spending categories, subcategories, the different spending types. So these would be your financial instruments like loans, grants, or payments. And then some high-level descriptive information about your payroll and pensions data. And then we'll jump into some of the organizational data descriptions. So this is any descriptive information you have about your internal authority accounts, or we'll highlight some different nuances of how to capture descriptions for your departments. And so that's what that third box is there. And then lastly, we have created a facility to allow authorities to upload their audit data. So this is data that would land on the actual summary page. It's separate data from the bulk transactions that you would transmit over the pipe. It is actually kind of summarized, audited, financial statement data that we've allowed the authorities to upload if they feel like that's an important part of their kind of business story. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. And then at the bottom here just talks about some of the nice features of the solution that allow, as you are uploading or editing data, what the process is. So I'll walk through the different areas of how you upload data, how you review uploaded data. You can manually edit data that's been uploaded and kind of manage it that way. So those are the cyclical process that it shows at the bottom. Any questions on that stuff before I dive into the demo? Okay. So with that, I will jump into the demo, and then once we're done with going through the demo, I'll highlight a few kind of pieces of the process surrounding the portal and where it kind of fits within the overall process as we start to onboard you guys. So let me get out of the full screen mode here. I will pull up. So when I go through this demo, I'm gonna go through two pieces of it. Thanks, Bob. The first is a walkthrough of the portal with MBTA's data already in it. So this is we've kind of seeded the solution with MBTA's data as they've gone through the process. When they came on board, they did not go through the actual portal process as this is kind of a new feature, but all the data is the kind of similar representative data that authority may have. So we're going to walk through that part of the process first to kind of show how things are in completed form. I'll highlight each of the fields, make sure that we have enough time to field questions on any of the fields if anything comes up, and then we'll walk through all the pages within the context of MBTA. Once we're done with that, I will then log into kind of a fresh set of the portal so you guys can see what the portal will look like when you first log in. We've added some features there to kind of highlight the differences between kind of how it is when you first log in and then how it would be when you're completed. So I'll go ahead and log in as MBTA. Again, this should be reviewed for all the folks on the phone, but I'll go through and kind of highlight this stuff in more detail. The home page is the first place that you land on. There are 4 tasks, high-level tasks that are on this page that allow the user to kick off into any of these individual pages, subsequent pages. So what these are it's kind of a splash page that allows the authority to see what they've done to date and what is left to do. So the big task that we've asked the authorities to complete, as I had mentioned earlier, is entering authority summary data, entering summary spending data, entering organizational data or descriptive data, and then entering audited spending and revenue data. If any of these tasks, so what the system is going to do is it's going to check to see if your authority has entered information for this particular piece. And if it has, if it sees data in the system, it will flip that from an incomplete to a complete and give the authority a heads up as far as if they need to go ahead and complete that task. So this is kind of the splash page. The user can go in and click on any of these buttons here. It'll take them to the associated tabs. Alternatively, they can click on the tab directly and to complete the task. So I'm going to go ahead and show you first the entering authority summary data tab, and we'll go ahead and highlight that process as within the life of MBTA. So a few things to note on this page. Most of this information that you'll see here is, or all of the information I should say, is text edited information or text entered information. So you'll notice how the first thing I want to highlight is this authority code. This is a code that will be tied to the authority's user account, and we'll send those out sometime in the next week or so here as we get kind of more stable, or as the system gets kind of ready for release. And we'll be distributing that information. You'll get a username, password, and then you'll get an associated authority code, which will be pre-populated here to show, and it just helps the system track, what authorities are doing what on the back end. The second is the authority name. That should be pretty straightforward. Again, there's help text here if you are unsure of exactly what the field is. That one should be pretty straightforward, I hope. Authority description. So this would be your high-level descriptive information about your authority. This description is going to, in the actual dashboard page, is going to live right below the authority title or header. The authority name. So that would be your authority description. The authority website, this is your external website, so in this case it's mbta.com. Authority contact information, you have 2 options here. for the authority contact information. When we worked with authorities in the past, some authorities wanted to provide, say, like a subdirectory within their, or a subpage within their external website. I believe it was Prim, who was like www.prim.com/contact us. And alternatively, if you want to actually provide an intake email address here, you can do that as well. So you have the option of either having this kick off to a direct person or inbox, or you can have it send them to a form as part of your web page that they can enter that information. So those are the two options there, and that would actually live in the contact us information as part of the dashboard pages when you go through those. These last four here, again, most of this should be review, but the first is this authority extended description. So this allows, in the state side, we actually have a page that, and we actually have now built it for authorities as well, that has, in addition to the kind of splash summary description that the authority would give, we've created an additional page that allows the authority to explain more about themselves. And I believe this is, I think we're calling it authority details. It's a pop-up page that has kind of what's included in authority data, what's excluded, a legal disclaimer about your authority, and then an extended description that kind of explains more about what your authority's mission or purpose is. So that's where these fields primarily will live. The legal disclaimer, I believe we have at the bottom of each of the browse pages. We have some just sample text in here, but it basically is just a way for your authority to go in and put in a legal disclaimer as far as whether the information has gone through a certain type of review or whatever the internal processes that your authority has followed before the data actually lands on the open checkbook. So that's kind of where this summary information is, or where it will live, how it's entered. These are free text fields, so we don't have any validation on this, aside from, I believe, some of them have some length constraints. But as you work through the process, you can enter this information. We'll have a refresh that will refresh this information into the dashboards, and it will display on there. And you can validate and say, okay, this looks good on the dashboard. We think it tells the full story, and we think the data is correct. And that's how the process will go. Any questions on that page? Does that make sense to folks on the line? Okay. So with that, I'll go ahead and show you. So once the authority has gone through and completed all this information, if they were to click back on the home page, it would swap it from incomplete to now complete status, and that task would be complete. The second set of tasks would be to click on the spending data description upload. And on this page, there's actually a few different ways that the authority will be entering information. And I'll walk through each of those sections in detail. The first is a list of spending types. So within the Open Checkbook, as you may remember from as we went through the demo screens, there are different financial instruments that the Open Checkbook now supports for authorities. Previously, we supported payments, or I should say vendor payments. We've now expanded that to include grants and loans information. And so what this first piece is, or first section is it allows the authority to enter in descriptive information about those particular spending types at a high level. So this is not anything related to the actual transactions associated with that financial instrument. It actually is just a high-level description that will go at the top of the page when the authority selects, say, grant or loan, and they want to browse data about that particular financial instrument. It will show that descriptive information below whatever you've selected. So this is just a high-level description that says, for our authority, loans mean X, Y, and Z to us. This is how we define loans, and this is how this is kind of our internal definition for how we define loans, and same for grants, same for payments. So again, we put in some sample text here for MBTA, but if your authority were to go in and enter this information, they would select that edit button. They could go in here, enter a description, apply the changes, and that would be how you would enter that information. Below that, I'll get into the spending category descriptions and subcategory descriptions in a minute. And then the third, so I'll come back to that piece. The third piece is entering high-level descriptive information about your payroll and pensions. So similar to the financial instruments that you may have as part of spending, your authority may want to enter in a descriptive paragraph about your actual overall payroll or overall pension as far as how your authority may define that. So this, again, this would go at the top of the page. for the payroll page, at the top of the page for the pension page, if your authority captures pensions. And it would just be a blurb that allows your authority to describe what is payroll as we define it, and what, what's our authority's definition of payroll, and likely the same with pensions. So that's a place where your authority can enter that information. The final piece on this page is somewhat of an operational piece. So this actually allows you to specify when your authority can support, or on what cycle your authority can support the submission of the actual bulk data for your different pieces of spending or payroll or pensions. So the state asked that all authorities target monthly cycles for transmitting new data. But if for whatever reason we can work with your authority to change that frequency if there is, kind of an extenuating circumstance. For example, say your authority may only collect payroll on a quarterly, or may only track or be able to aggregate payroll on a quarterly basis. You can go in and switch that value here. Again, this is more of an operational piece, which allows the Commonwealth and the authority to track when files have been sent, when they should have been sent, and allows us to kind of make sure that we're kind of staying on top of these things. So that's what this piece is here. And again, this is to monitor the cyclical transmission of the actual bulk data that you would send to the Commonwealth throughout the operational process. And this is not, one thing to note here is this is not part of the onboarding process as far as these cycles are not part of the onboarding process. They're once your authority has been onboarded, ongoing from that point on, you would say, all right, we're going to transmit payments monthly, we can only support transmitting payroll quarterly, and so on and so forth. Questions on that page before I jump into the spending category descriptions and subcategory? Okay, so I will kick off now an area of that's a little bit, probably one of the trickier areas of the portal is uploading spending category and subcategory descriptions. So from this page, you can go in and select and kick off and upload spending category descriptions. And there's a few things to note on this page. So what we've added so the purpose of this page is to allow your authority to add descriptions associated with the high-level spending categories that Commonwealth has asked the authorities to target. So as you guys are probably going through now and you're categorizing your individual transactions, we want to allow the authorities to provide descriptive information about those categories. So even though the high-level spending categories are Commonwealth, originally Commonwealth defined, we want to allow the authorities to provide a description on their terms for each of these high-level spending categories. So that's the first kind of piece of functionality associated with this page. The second is, if you note, there's a spending type in that first column there. So again, this allows you to specify, in addition to the category and description associated with that category, there may be a financial instrument associated with that category as well. So really what we've allowed here is to say, if you have administrative expenses associated with your payments that go out the door, you may want to provide a description about that, administrative expenses for payments. Alternatively, you may want to also provide a description about your administrative expenses as it relates to your loans transactions. So we allowed the facility here for authorities to upload spending category descriptions, not only for the spending category itself, but also with the financial instrument that it's associated with. So a thing to note there. And again, this may be somewhat of overkill if your authority just decides, hey, for a given spending category, we only have one description, then you can enter it that way as well.
Just a note on this one. While this example shows the same spending categories for payments duplicated for loans, this is just an example. There can be a completely different set of spending categories for loans as there is for payments, as there is for grants as well. So this is just an example showing them how they're duplicated, and you could have separate descriptions, but they could be completely different categories as well.
Any questions on that piece? That is, one of the, I guess, kind of trickier contextual pieces of this process. Okay. So what I'll go through now, so what this page represents is a previously uploaded file. And a thing to note on this page, as opposed to the previous pages that I went through, those were all manual data entry. Since your authority may have a handful or more spending categories and associated descriptions, we've built these pages to primarily run off spreadsheet uploads. So you'll notice here how this report shows, or I should say this report shows a previously uploaded spreadsheet file. And so we can go ahead, I'll just go through the process of uploading a new, I'm going to delete out this file, and then we'll upload a new file so you guys can see the process of that you would go through to do this. So we delete this uploaded data. It'll give you a warning here. It'll delete that data from the system, and we can go ahead and upload a new spreadsheet. So what the system does, and again, this is probably a review for most folks, is takes you through a 4-step process, allows you to browse for a file. I'll do that now. We'll do sample spending category descriptions. And a quick note on this, you have a choice for it to be a pipe delimited file or a comma delimited file when you upload it. We'll hit next. It's going to map these columns automatically to the actual columns that we're targeting in our system. One thing we're doing on here, we have sent out, I believe Bobby sent out, and you've been working with Bobby to work with some file upload specifications docs that we have. And basically it just says when you're uploading data into these portal for these, as you go through this process, you want to make sure that there's headers on each column and that those headers match certain names so that when it does pull into the system, everything lines up. So the way that the system will match these is it will look in your file, make sure you have authority code as the header for the first column. It'll match it to a field in our system and it will load it in correctly, or it will load it correctly. So please work with Bobby if you guys have any questions on the actual file formatting of that, but we should have sent out, I believe we sent out some spreadsheets that kind of dictate the structure that these files should be in. So once you've gone through and this has been mapped, you'll hit next. It'll tell you, for the IT folks in the room, it'll tell you if it's an insert or update. If it finds that record already loaded in the system, it'll say, oh, this is already a loaded record for that with that same content. Let's just update the description with the new one. If it doesn't find a match for that authority, for that spending type, for that category, it'll go ahead and insert a new record. So that's what it's telling you here for data validation. You hit load data. It'll tell you what it's about to do, or I should say what it has done. It'll tell you, in this case, we've inserted 24 new rows. Nothing's been updated or failed, and nothing's been needs to be reviewed. Once you hit finish, you'll go back to this page, and it'll show you the file that you've uploaded. If you upload a file, say it's a big file, and you realize that you made a mistake or something needs to be changed on an individual record, you could go in and select that record here. You can make a change to it, so I can make an edit here. So related recipients. You could apply the changes. Alternatively, you could also delete the record if you realize you uploaded a spending category that's not relevant. You can delete it as well. Once you apply changes, it'll bring you back to this page, tell you what tell you that it's processed something, and it'll update this table. So a couple different ways to manage the descriptive information about your spending categories. Again, you can upload new data. If you realize that that data is incorrect or you're working with the business to further refine these descriptions, you can go through many iterations. It's actually designed to go through many iterations of uploading a file, confirming the data, re-upload or deleting it out, re-uploading a new file, making edits on the fly once it's been in the system, and those types of things. Once you're happy with the information that's been uploaded, you can go back here. And it'll tell you that, yes, this is complete. We've uploaded data for this, for our spending categories. This same process follows true for the remaining fields that I'm going to or the remaining screens that I'm going to walk through. So if I click on spending subcategory, we would now go through the same process to upload spending subcategory codes, names, and descriptions. Quick note about spending subcategories. These spending subcategories, as you'll notice, are separate from the financial instruments, and it's just your you can treat this as your master list of spending subcategories that your authority would define. So again, if you have a spending subcategory code, subcategory name, you would associate a description with that match, as you can see here with the list of MBTA codes and names. And these are authority defined. So unlike these high-level spending categories, the spending subcategories are defined within your authority as you deem appropriate. Again, and this holds true for all of these, For the spending subcategory names and codes, those would, of course, need to match the names and codes that are on your bulk data so that it pulls in these descriptions when it loads it into the dashboards. And that holds true for the accounts descriptive information, the department descriptive information, and the high-level spending category descriptive information.
So an important note about the subcategories, because you notice here that there is no mapping between the top-level spending category and the subcategories here. The intent is that while you have that maybe mapping internally, this system kind of treats it as an independent list, and when you send a payment transaction, that is when the system will marry the category on that payment transaction with the subcategory on that payment transaction. So if you look at Open Checkbook and you see the category hierarchy that has categories and subcategories, that hierarchy is defined by the payment transactions that you put those on. Does that make sense? Okay.
So as Corey had said, that's how we define, or how your authority would define the relationship between your subcategories and your categories through the actual bulk transactions that come in. Once you have gone through again, you could go through and go through the same process that you went through with spending categories. You would follow that same process for spending subcategory descriptions. Once complete, you would go back. You can see that the task has been completed, and then once this entire page is worth of tasks has been completed, if you were to go back to the home page, it would tell you that that whole page is now done. Once you're complete with those first two pages, you can either go back to the home page or select the next tab, which would be organizational data. Again, these two fields follow the same process. There are two pieces of organizational data descriptions that we are asking the authorities to manage. The first is account descriptions. So if you click on Review and Upload here, you have, again, a list of account codes, names, and their associated account descriptions. And this would work the same way that the spending subcategory descriptions would work. You could upload new data, delete uploaded data, or edit individual records. The same is true for uploading department descriptions. You have a department code, you have a department name, and you have department description on the third column here. Same process holds true. You could upload new data, edit department descriptive information directly, or delete out a previously uploaded file. Once you're complete with those two tasks, you've now entered in descriptive information for categories, subcategories, accounts, and departments all associated within your organization. One note actually on the department list here. So MBTA is one of the more, the larger and more complex organization or authority organizations. So they have a fairly robust list here of department codes and names. What we ask is if your authority doesn't have a list of departments like we did with MSBA, that you just upload your authority name here and associated description. So this is separate from your actual, this could actually be a repeat or should be a repeat of your authority summary description. But what this will do is when you go into the browse departments for your authority, it will just repeat your authority name and description. So it's just a note of, for authorities without a massive list of departments, we just ask that you reload or that you load your your authority code and name and associated description with your authority, and that will be the representative piece instead of your department list. And we can work with you on that for the smaller authorities. If you don't have department lists, we can go through some of that in more detail during some of the data sessions, but just a note there. The final piece of uploaded information in the authority portal is the audit data. So most of the authorities should remember that back when we went through the Open Checkbook screens on the authority summary dashboard, there are two charts on the left-hand side that will display revenue and spending information for that authority. That information is separate from the bulk transaction or the bulk spending data that you would go through when you go through the traditional Open Checkbook browse screens. So in order to get that data in the system, we've created an upload facility, since it's typically a smaller data set, directly in the portal, as opposed to transmitting that information from server to server. So this page really allows the authorities to enter in summary information about that audited, in this case, audited revenue. So this would be an overall, here's what our audited revenue means to our authority, here's our description and definition of it. You can enter that information here. You can do the same thing down below here for audited spending. And then once your authority has entered in the summary descriptive information about your audited revenue and spending, you can go in and review and upload the actual audited data itself. So this is really the only portion of the portal where you're uploading transactional data as opposed to descriptive or contextual data. If you were to click on this button here, you'll notice how we've just seeded this with some sample data. But what this is for your authority for a fiscal year, for a given revenue source, you would attach a revenue source description and an associated amount with that. That would be in the spreadsheet form, the same as the description files, and you would upload that directly in the portal. And where this information is going to live, as I had noted, this would live in the pie charts on that summary page, and we have some additional pop-up pages where you would see some of this information as well. But again, this allows the authorities to paint the kind of audited picture associated with the authority, as opposed to these are just checks out the door. So this would be an area where you can highlight, kind of the full summary story of your authority as it is with regard to your financially audited statements, as opposed to just bulk transactions that go out the door. So that's the purpose of this page, is for the authority to upload that information here. And again, same features hold true. You can upload new data, delete uploaded data. If you upload, say, for example, an authority spreadsheet file, you upload it and it looks, funky on the dashboard screens, you can delete it out and re-upload a new file. You go back, the same process holds true for the audited spending data. So if you click on audited spending here, the same thing holds true. The only note here is we distribute these by spending types. So these would be your spending types as your audited, and again, this is your audited financial statements at a high level, as opposed to the bulk transactions that are bulk spending that goes out the door in check form. And that's where you would enter this information here. Once that's complete, you've entered in your summary descriptions about your audit data. You've uploaded your audit transactions, and the authority is happy with it. You'd hit apply changes, and you could go back to the home page, and you would see that task has now been completed. So let me stop there. Any questions on any of the screens as far as how the data is entered, what the implications are for the dashboards, structure or general content? Okay. So the last thing that I wanted to walk through with regard to the portal is the file monitoring tab. So this is a separate area of the portal that we've designed to try and assist the actual file transmission and testing process as the authorities are onboarding. So in addition to all of this contextual information that we've put on these screens here, there's also, you guys will also, of course, be sending bulk data files to our servers. And so this file monitoring page, it comes up here. As that's loading, I'll kind of speak to this. The file monitoring page is actually a list of files that your authority has transmitted to our servers, and you can actually select one of those files and either review the file that's been transmitted, whether it was completed or what the status was, and you can actually choose to delete that file out of our system directly through this portal if you choose to. So the simple use case where this would be very useful is if your authority, as your authority is building the file, they would go in and say that your authority transmitted a file. It was, 2/3 correct, but some of the records failed, and the data is not showing up correctly in the open checkbook. You can actually go into this file monitoring tab. Let me see if I can refresh this. There we go. You can actually go into this file monitoring tab and see for your authority what the different files that you've transmitted are, what the names of those files are, what their type is, their associated status, their start time and end time of when the file was run, and the loaded record count. So again, this is designed as part of the onboarding process when your authority is transmitting files to us, and say there's a discrepancy between the file that got sent to the open checkbook and what your authority is seeing on the dashboard screens. This is where you could go in and you could actually select one of these files and say, oh, this one says completed. Let's go and review what happened here. It'll give you the list of the information about that file. If you deem that you want to delete that file's contents back out of the open checkbook, you can select delete file records here, and it will delete out that file, which will allow your authority to then either fix or change the file and resend a corrected or updated file. So this is, again, as part of the onboarding process. As part of the onboarding process, it allows your authority the ability to transmit files, confirm in the open checkbook dashboard that those files are correct and complete, and if there is an issue with it, delete those files back out of the system if there are any discrepancies or issues. Let me see if I can run on with this in here. Any questions on the file monitoring piece? As that's loading, I guess I can speak to the fiscal year report. So the other piece of this is if your authority, if you want to manage your data as you're sending different files that have different contents in them, you can also delete files out by fiscal year. So this is useful if, say, you've sent a historical file that has 2013 data in it, and you started to send incremental files throughout the course of some of which is, say, fiscal year 2013, and you continue into fiscal year 2014. If you wanted to do a spot check and actually delete out data potentially across files, for example, fiscal year, this feature would allow you to do it. So that's what the fiscal year report really does, is allows your authority to, instead of deleting directly by file, you can delete by fiscal year. The features work the exact same, but that's how that feature would work. So I'm not sure what's going on with the internet here, but I'll switch over actually now to the screens that would display when your authority would log in fresh.
We might have lost our network connection here in the room. Just let's give us a second to see if it'll come back. That's okay. We can just talk to her.
Try this one. Well, I'm going to lose my.
Sure. No.
Yeah. Well, I guess I could just speak to this part. It looks like we might have lost our internet in the room here, but basically what will happen is when your authority logs in, the big thing to note is all of the fields, instead of them being completely blank, what we've done is we've actually seeded some kind of instructive placeholder text in each of the fields that basically says, there's some brackets around it says, this field is intended for your authority for X, Y, and Z purpose. Please enter your information here. So what that does is you can see then on the dashboards where all that instructive text will live. So it'll allow your authority to say, okay, if I'm going in and entering descriptive information about my authority for the authority description field, for example, the authority doesn't have to guess then as far as where is that information eventually going to live and how is it going to be placed on the Open Checkbook dashboards. So as you start to clear that helper text out and put in your own information, you'll be able to see on the dashboard screens what you've adjusted and where as you go through the process. So that's one note that's different when you'll first log into the system. That is different than what you've seen with MBT. You want to add anything?
Yeah, and the other thing to add is that we didn't want to leave it blank, so that we wanted to make it very clear when you look at the dashboards if there's something that you haven't filled in, as opposed to just leaving it blank. Naturally, if you want to leave it intentionally blank, that is fine, but we wanted to make sure that it was intentional.
Yeah. So that was the main thing to note with that second demo we're going to show. But any questions on that? Does that make sense, folks? Okay, so now that we've kind of gone through the demo, the few things we wanted to highlight is with regarding to some of the process. So as we kind of went through the demo, let me pull this in full screen. Give it 1 second here, I'll pull it back into full screen. So a few things to note, differences we wanted to highlight between when your authority is actually onboarding versus when your authority, as we go through the actual, once you've onboarded and it's just in kind of a post-go-live mode. The first is that as your authority is uploading information, as some of this should be review, we are going to configure the system to refresh your authority's descriptive information or authority portal information at least on an hourly basis. So we're working through some things right now to figure out the kind of optimal timing on this, but we're targeting at least an hourly basis that allows us to say, if your authority has entered information in the portal, you're going to see that information at latest within an hour on the dashboard screens. So that's the first kind of procedural piece that we want to know with regard to onboarding when you are putting information into the portal. And also the second is that we are going to send out credentials sometime in the near future here to this onboarding environment that we built, which is really the authority's environment to use the portal, upload information in the portal, configure their information, and then test that information on also an onboarding environment dashboards. So those are the two things to note kind of as part of the onboarding process with regard to kind of when this data is going to be refreshed and then what environments your authorities are going to be using to actually validate, confirm, and test this information. After the authority has gone through the onboarding process, we ask that the authority refreshes this data kind of as needed. So our current authorities, I believe, we have on a semi-annual basis where they would refresh the information. Say your authority description changes once every year, or you want to adjust it once every year, or something like that. On that ongoing basis, that's when the schedule would become much longer. This information is meant to be fairly static, and so I guess we're targeting a somewhat of a semi-annual or annual basis that your authority would go in and actually adjust this information after you're onboarded. And again, you'll always use the same configuration portal, login credentials to update your contextual information. And then the last piece of this, as far as once you've onboarded, is now that everything's tested and validated and live in production, we run on a monthly sweep. So that's why we ask the authorities to provide data on a monthly basis. Because we have a monthly sweep of files that updates the information in the dashboards as new information comes into our system. So again, if your authority, for whatever reason, needs to be longer than that monthly process, our process would still sweep every month. It's just you obviously wouldn't get new updated information into the system until we actually get your new file. So a few things to note there on the onboarding process and differences between that process versus the post-go-live process. Questions on that slide?
So would when you say it's a monthly sweep, so I assume it's the last day of the month, A&F will sweep it?
It's actually we've actually set it up to be the first Saturday of the month.
Oh, okay.
I believe the first Saturday of the month. Yeah, for weekend processing and those types of things.
Okay. Thanks.
And one note on that, actually, if your authority is done, kind of going through your audit process or not audit, validation process for your new monthly data, and you want to send it a week early, that's fine. It will just sit in our queue until the monthly sweep pulls on that first Saturday.
Right. Okay.
Cool. Any other questions on that? Okay, and so this slide is just meant to kind of do a quick recap. I know we've talked through a lot of different, kind of pages and features of the portal, and so we want to do a quick recap on what we've gone through and what each page is really designed to ask of the authorities as far as tasks are concerned. So what we did here was just highlight for each page on the portal the high-level authority tasks, and that's kind of what this slide highlights. So I'll just spot check a few of these. We wanted to have it in your guys' hands to review. But basically, as you can see here, for the home page, that's really your status page to see what tasks have been completed and not completed. For the authority summary data page, that allows you to enter your contact information, websites, descriptions, anything high level that's textual about your authority. Spending data descriptions, so this would be, as we talk through the description about your different financial instruments. The one note on there, we are asking all authorities at least to upload or to enter a payment description. Of course, we understand some authorities may not capture loans or grants. And then address spending data upload tasks, entering high-level descriptions about your payment, payroll, and pension data, and then adjusting any frequency changes. For the organizational data screens, this would be to review and address department and account descriptions, through the data upload tasks. And then for the spending and revenue audit page, this one works slightly differently, where in addition to entering summary descriptions about your audit data, you would actually upload the bulk audit data on those pages. And then the last two we talked through briefly are really kind of more administrative features of the solution that allow your authority to manage the transmitted files that are coming into our system, what's been transmitted, what's its status, how many rows have been loaded, and delete these files as necessary throughout the testing process. And again, you can do that either by file or by fiscal year, depending on how you guys are running your testing. Questions on that? Okay. So, quick highlight. Corey, I don't know, did you want to highlight the project slide at all?
Yeah, so everyone's familiar with this now. So we're just putting it up there again. So based on our discussion last week, we talked about the file specs. Based on this discussion, we've talked about the configuration portal. You have the onboarding user guide and the file spec documentation that went along with that. The intent now is that you have everything you need to get started. We will send out the credentials and the link to the site shortly, if not by the end of this week, by the beginning of next week, so you can start using the onboarding environment. So our kind of next steps is that in the next week we have scheduled one-on-one meetings, and our goal of those meetings would be to go over any questions that has come up reviewing any of these materials. So anything on the file specs, anything on the portal, anything that you've come across as you've been starting to do the work, we want to start to address in those meetings that we've set up. So this is where we are in the schedule, and it's basically run with it, and we're here definitely for support, for questions. Reach out to us directly, and let us know how we can help. That's the next one. So this is just a recap of our upcoming meetings. So I think we've kicked off with most everyone the individual status sessions this week, and next week we're going to have the data individual meetings as we talked about, where we'll get into any of the details that you currently have. And beyond that, we'll continue. After that, we'll continue our weekly status meetings and have follow-up meetings where necessary with each of you. Any questions? I think that's it for us.
Just a quick question, dumb question. The portal user guide, did you say you've already sent that out, or that's going to be sent out?
I believe we sent it out, but we sent a lot of emails, so let me double check. Maybe what we'll do is we'll put a packet together that has everything, and we will send it out with the as a follow up to this, just so that people don't have to search through all their emails.
All right, great.
Okay.
Any other questions?
We are also going to put these materials on the authority support site that you see here, so that you also don't have to go back and find them in your emails if you didn't happen to save them, as well as the recorded webinar sessions that we have here.
Great, thanks.
Great. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate the time.
Thanks, guys.
And we'll talk to you all very soon.
Bye.